On this channel, we produce a huge amount of content covering the world of cleaner, greener, safer and smarter vehicles. But there's one thing that we haven't really done a whole lot of, and that is range testing of electric vehicles. And that's been for a number of reasons. As you might know, I've been driving electric vehicles since 2006. I have suffered one occasion when I've run out of charge. That was in the middle of winter when I was carrying two kids up the mountain to go and see the snow, and we had to have a diversion, and we were in a very early Nissan Leaf and the battery was very cold, and I ran out of charge and rolled into the parking lot where the rapid charger happened to be. I basically lucked out. My partner has run out of charge once, again in the same Nissan Leaf, interestingly, when on a bit of a family emergency trip where, you know, it just skipped your mind and you ran out of charge and ended up having to help them get home. But for the most part, I try not to drive EVs to their absolute limit. And that's because when I was much younger, I had a Morris Minor, and my dear friend, Kate Walton-Elliott, the other presenter on this channel, decided to tell me that she could get to almost beyond the E of empty in her Morris Minor and it still had fuel in, and kind of suggested that I might have the same situation. And I tried it out and ran out of petrol on a very busy motorway on a very cold day and had to wait more than an hour for a friend to come with a jerry can. So I have always had a bit of an aversion to running out of fuel, whether it's electricity, whether it's diesel, whether it's gasoline. But there are some amazing content creators in the YouTube space and journalists who regularly carry out range tests of electric vehicles. They charge them fully, they then drive them until empty to see what happens. Now, I, over the last weekend or two, have been in a conversation online about how I feel that range tests to empty, while they used to be a really great idea, have become something of an albatross around EVs' necks, because a lot of people look at EVs running out of charge at the side of the road as proof that EVs are rubbish and we shouldn't have them. However, the wonderful Tom Moloughney from State of Charge and from Inside EVs has agreed to come and join me today to discuss why he actually does carry out these tests. And I think, Tom, you are one of the most strict when it comes to range tests, and I think your range tests do actually serve a purpose. So let's talk back and forth. Maybe you can convince me that range tests till empty actually have a purpose. Thank you for joining me. It's been a while, Tom. How are you doing?
Doing great, Nikki. Thanks for having me on. It's always a pleasure to hang out and talk with you. You know, we go way back. I don't know if a lot of people know that,
do.
But Nikki and I have been hanging out at car shows and talking for, it's got to be a decade now, Nikki. So we were both kind of early out there. I might not have been quite as early as you, but shortly thereafter. So I appreciate having me on the channel to talk about it's a good conversation, in my opinion, and a worthwhile one. And I do understand your point of view. I certainly do. You're not the only person. I've heard this from other people. And there's a lot of different range tests going on out there. But I'd like to talk a little bit about what I do and why I think it's valid. First of all, you know, range is a moving target. There is no one range. If you do a range test, you can't set that in stone. Okay, the car can go this far. You know, there's so many conditions, topography, temperature, speed that's going to affect it. But what I try to do is I try to control the environment as much as possible. I do these 70-mile-an-hour highway range tests. So let me talk a little bit about what I do to do that, and maybe that'll help to you to better understand why I think the way I do the tests. And Kyle Connor from Out of Spec, he and I agreed about 2.5 years ago that we would follow the same set protocol. And that way, if we both range test, we both do the same exact thing. We just kind of gentleman's agreement said, this is how we're going to conduct range tests. And we talked back and forth to come up with a method. So first of all, we explain the gross and net capacity of the EV, and we explain why that's a different number. We try to make these a little educational when we do them. Not everybody understands there's gross capacity, there's net capacity. And then we DC fast charge the vehicle before we start to warm up the battery and get it up to 100% charged. We check the tire pressure and we set it to the manufacturer's recommended tire pressure before the range test, because tire pressure can affect your range. If you overinflate the tires, you'll go a little bit further. But we do this set protocol for all the EVs so we can compare them fairly. After we do that, we note the tire and wheel combo that's on the car, because some EVs have larger size tires as optional. Typically, the larger the wheel size, it cuts into your range a little bit. Then when we get on the highway and start our 70-mile-an-hour range test, we check the speedometer to GPS, because not all speedometers are perfectly calibrated. And then we set the car to a true 70 miles an hour. We have 2 different GPS apps that we use to make sure we're locked in at 70 miles an hour. We monitor the wind in the area. We have wind apps. And while we can't control the wind, we tell the followers and the people watching the video, there's a 6-mile-an-hour crosswind right now, or we have a tailwind and it's going to affect the range. We state the temperature and we explain how that's going to affect the range, if it's cold, if it's warm. We drive on a relatively flat course. We pick a course out that doesn't have much elevation change. I do all of my tests on the New Jersey Turnpike. It's relatively flat, so it's the same exact course, car for car. And I drive in long loops up and down the turnpike. So if there is a slight elevation change, or if there is wind that day, I'm going to get it pushing me as well as coming against me. So, we try to eliminate wind and elevation change. I always put the car in the eco mode that it has, and I set the climate control to 68 degrees and on fan setting 1 on all the vehicles. So now we have a set way that we set the cars up, and then I don't drive it until it dies. You don't see me in my videos pushing an EV ever. I drive it down to 0. And I might drive it a few miles after the state of charge says 0. I can tell, I've done this with so many EVs now, Nikki, I can tell when the battery's about to give, when the pedal response is muted, when, it won't go faster than 30, 40 miles an hour. And I always, during my range test, I'm calculating where I am and how far the range has to go. So when I do these loops, I'll make the loop smaller and smaller and smaller. So I end up pulling into the charging station right at the time when the state of charge hits 0. I've gotten very good at timing it. So I try to do the best I can to control all of these different things that can happen, Nikki. And even though I do all that, I still note in the video and in my written articles, this is a range test that I did today in these conditions. Your mileage may vary. And it will vary if the temperature's different, if you're on a hilly road, if you have 4 people in the car as opposed to just 1. So I hear what you're saying about the unreliability of range tests, but because I go to such great lengths to try to have a set protocol, and I repeat that on every car I do, I think I'm being fair to the cars, and I think it's a worthwhile video for people to watch to get an idea of about how far the car will go at highway speeds.
And I think both you and Kyle are very responsible in your range tests. I watch your range tests. I will continue to watch your range tests because, like I say, from a nerdy, geeky point of view, as someone who understands the cars and the drivetrains, I do get a bit of a kick out of seeing how far can you go in XYZ. And, when our new vehicle arrives, we are going to be doing a towing test. I think that's fair to say, but we're not going to be doing a towing range test. We're going to be doing a real world trip, towing a vehicle through the mountains, not because it's the mountains, just because I'm helping a friend get a car from point A to point B. And that will be a real world experience rather than you can definitely do this. And I think everybody that I watch does tend to couch it as you guys do, that it is just one day, one situation. I think the thing that worries me is I've seen an increase lately in the number of YouTube videos of people purporting to do range tests, like you said, where they do a straight line trip, but then they also almost willingly run out of charge in the middle of nowhere, which I feel just gives such a bad vibe to EV owners and EVs in general. And we also see people not really planning ahead, like not understanding the charging network, not understanding how to get charging to work. And I think the conversation that we as a a kind of a group of journalists, influencers, YouTubers, whatever you want to call us, have to kind of make sure is that we don't let too many of those, we're going to drive it till it runs out at the side of the road and we're in the middle of nowhere and we're in the Arizona desert or whatever it happens to be. What do we do now to detract from some of the benefits of driving electric? And I guess I'd say to that is you don't see people making videos about running out of gas. And I guess that's the question I'd have for you guys is, would you welcome it if other automotive journalists started doing the same thing that you guys do, but with internal combustion engine cars? Like, we filled the car up to, absolutely full 10-gallon fuel tank. We're now going to drive it and see what happens.
The thing is, I don't think people would be interested in watching it. And I think that's why people don't do it. The whole thing about EVs is it's new and people are curious. And let's face it, Nikki, a lot of people on YouTube produce content for clicks. I mean, we all want clicks. You want views, I want views. But some people are willing to maybe go further to get clicks, pictures, thumbnails of people walking in the desert because their car ran out or whatever. That gets, unfortunately, people like to watch train wrecks.
It's the drama, right? It's the drama
of
it.
I think it's up to us, people like us that do the best we can to try to educate as well as be entertaining. Because let's face it, we need to be entertaining for people to watch our videos. I think we have to have that balance, and I get criticized sometimes by people that I know, like my friends that are on YouTube, because my thumbnails are very boring. It's never, you don't see me like wow, or, and that's just who I am. And, I guess I could probably get more clicks if I sensationalize things, but
oh, please don't.
You and I are not gonna go down that road as much as say other people, and that's fine. I'm not criticizing. People can do whatever works for you works for you.
Right, exactly.
But as I mentioned earlier, I don't. In my range tests, you don't see me running out and hitchhiking or calling a tow truck. It can happen. A few times I got really close. With the Polestar was the worst because, and here's another reason why it might be might be useful. With Polestar, as well as you may have experienced this, Nikki.
Yes.
Once you get under 6% state of charge, you go in total reduced power mode. It doesn't do that with other EVs. The Volvo XC40 Recharge also. But that's a reason why I think maybe the range tests are useful to some people, because I let people know this. I say, this EV in particular, you do not want to drive it under 10%, because once you hit 6% state of charge, it acts like the other EVs that I drive do when they're below zero. I was cruising on the highway at 70 miles an hour with 6% state of charge, and the car started slowing down on me. I didn't think I was going to make it to the charging station, but I did. I just crawled along at 20 miles an hour those last 4 miles. But that's helpful to let people know that, look, if you have a Polestar, I love the Polestar too.
Absolutely.
But don't drive it under 8% state of charge, because you're in danger of going into severely reduced power mode. So, I mean, I totally understand your point of view, and I saw that tweet, and that's why I responded to it. And I get what you're saying about maybe irresponsible range tests, but I also think there's room to do them right, as long as we explain to people why we're doing them and how to learn from it.
And Tom, I think you've convinced me that responsible range tests are a great idea. One of the things that I did want to talk to you about was, an ideal world where we wouldn't have to do these range tests, because really, those people who are responsibly carrying out range tests, such as Kyle and yourself, are doing it because right now, the range tests around the world for EVs are terrible. They are completely lab-derived. They don't represent real-world range. And automakers do have some say in how those tests are carried out. It's why Teslas always have a super high range on paper, don't always get that in real world. And then other car companies like Porsche totally downrate their cars, but in the real world, they go much further. I'm sure your Porsche Taycan, I think, is still, your Porsche Taycan video is still the longest range you've got past the EPA, right?
Yeah, the Taycan crushes the EPA. And I agree with you. I wish we could come up with a better range rating. A lot of people don't realize a couple of things. The first thing is that there are two different test protocols. The manufacturer gets to decide which test protocol they're going to use, the 2-cycle test or the 5-cycle test. It's, so number one, the manufacturer can decide which one suits them best, which is kind of weird. And number two, a lot of people don't realize the EPA doesn't conduct the tests. The manufacturer does. And they then supply that information to the EPA. The EPA then can choose to just accept it as it is and post the numbers, or they can say, well, we're going to test it ourselves just to make sure our data, jives with yours. And they don't test nearly all the cars. So, Tesla chooses the 5-cycle test, which typically gives vehicles longer certified ranges than if you did the same test with the 2-cycle test.
And we remember a couple of years ago, there was a Tesla, I think it was a Model 3, there was some error in the testing overnight, and it resulted in the car getting a lower testing. And so Elon Musk and Tesla actually pushed for the car to be recertified. I think that was one where the EPA did actually do the testing. It's been a while since that story came through. But I think it's really important to highlight that what you see on your Moloughney sticker or your window sticker, wherever it is around the world, is not always what you're going to achieve. And as our good mutual friend John Volker is keen to point out multiple times, your mileage will vary. Not may, will.
Absolutely. And, it varies with gas cars too. I don't think I've ever gotten the window sticker miles per gallon. I remember when I bought a Chevy Equinox years back with the 4-cylinder. It was supposed to be the Eco whatever. It was supposed to get 38 miles per gallon. I never saw more than 32 miles per gallon. But, we didn't care because there's a gas station around every corner. So it didn't matter as much. But with EVs, especially where we are today with the state of infrastructure, people are micromanaging and scrutinizing the range because the high-speed DC fast charging isn't everywhere yet. I think we're going to worry a little bit less about this in the coming years, Nikki, when we get a more mature high-speed DC fast charging network.
Absolutely. And I think that, once people have understood how electric cars charge, and I think the conversation that we should be having, and again, you point this out on your State of Charge show, is that a good charging strategy is not to turn up at a rapid charger with 20% and charge all the way up to 100. Actually, sometimes it's more beneficial to rock in with 5 or 10% and then charge up to 60% and then go on to your next location. And a couple of weeks ago, planning a trip that I'm going to be making to Utah next week, I actually played with the variables and I told a better route planner, don't allow the car to charge beyond 60%. And I actually would have simulated journey. I arrived quicker, stopping more frequently, charging from 5 to 60% than I did using a better route planner's default mode, which had me stopping far less frequently, but charging up to like 80 or 90%. And I think those kind of conversations are really important to have. And so I am very grateful that you are doing very, very solid, very good range tests. And that's why I reached out to you, because I realized after, I'd watched a couple of videos online over the weekend where a couple of YouTubers, some well-known, some not well-known, had done range tests until the vehicles are completely empty and got stranded at the side of the road. And that just made me go, you know what, that doesn't look good for EVs. That doesn't look good for the future of transportation. There must be a way around it. And I kind of, tweeted out and had a great conversation with amazing people online. You were one of them. And so I was like, hey, we should make this happen. We should make this conversation happen. Tom, thank you so much for adding some balance to what was a very one-sided discussion and would have been quite a one-sided video had I done it on my own. So thank you for teaching me and arguing for the case of range tests. I think your range tests, where you do everything correctly and follow a very set procedure that's reproducible, does make sense. I'm still completely against run it until it dries out. And from what you've just said, it kind of sounds like you're in that same boat as well. But before I go, tell everybody where they can find out about your channel, because you've got a great YouTube channel as well.
Thanks, Niro. Appreciate it. And thanks for having me on. I really appreciate this. Ping me anytime if you want me to be a guest on your channel. I love the fact that it will expose me to some maybe people that don't know about my YouTube channel that you just mentioned. So I have a YouTube channel called State of Charge, and I really focus, I mean, I do all things EV, but I'm not a news channel like you are. I talk primarily about electric vehicle charging. I review home charging stations and I do charging recordings, and I explain it because I think that's going to be the biggest pain point to EV adoption is people learning how to charge. So it's kind of educational and entertaining. So it's a State of Charge on YouTube. I'm also a senior editor at Inside EVs, where I do written articles. And thanks again for having me on, Nikki.
And it's been an absolute pleasure. And Tom, you should know that I regularly watch your content. When you had that excellent video about the Ford F-150 vehicle-to-home system, I was recommending that to everybody all day because that's such an incredible video. As you know, I have an F-150 Lightning on order, and we are going to be using that system in our home. So I cannot wait to see more intersection between energy and EVs. I think it's going to be fantastic. Thank you so much, Tom. See you again soon.
Thanks, Nikki.
And thank you at home for watching. I hope you liked the video, different as it was, so be sure to give it a thumbs up and don't forget to leave your thoughts below or in our free to join Discord chat room. There are links in the video description, and if you'd like us to make more videos like this, please tell us and we'll make it happen. And if you really, really like the video, why not leave us a super thanks? It's easy to do so, and everything you do send goes towards helping us make great content. If you want a generalised news roundup in the world of cleaner, greener, safer and smarter vehicles, check out our news roundup show every weekend, and don't forget that we produce videos every single day on this network for you to enjoy, ranging from deep dives and features through to tutorials, unboxings and reviews. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to this channel and our other channel, Transport Evolve Take 2, and give that bell a gentle ding to make sure you're told when our video goes live. And please do consider filling out our annual viewer survey. There's about a week left before we close it to respondents. It'll take about 20 minutes, but your answers really will help us better represent you, our audience, to sponsors and partners of the channel, as well as help make sure that we make content that you are gonna enjoy. Thanks on behalf of the entire TE crew go out to the folks on my right for being our $15 to $49 a month supporters. Special thanks to our $50 a month supporters, Chris Maxwell, Pedro Mua-Pinheiro, Patrick Boyowski, Bennett Elder, Brian Newton, Dave Kitchen, Michael Goad, Ricky Leon, Andrew Martin, Guido Trahota, Brophy Wolf, Tesla in the Gong, Gordon C., Stephen O'Donoghue, Carl Hodgson, Anthony Coates, Regine Vellers, Jim Burness, Chris Ascenta, Chris and Michael Johnson, Peter Dillinger and Denny Hyde, and our deepest gratitude to our $100 a month supporters, Anonymous Freak, Marcel Ward, Reggie Watts, Rory Litwin, Joe Bresney, Reed R., JP Fagerback, Russ, Will Graylin, Matthew Drobnak, John Lyons, Andrew Glenn, Paul Conway, Laura Reynolds, Ellery Hensley, and Ian. If you'd like to be part of that amazing list, you can join Patreon at the link below, hit the join button to support us on YouTube, or show us your support through Bitcoin, Ko-fi, or our cool swag store. And if you're unable to support us financially, just know that watching the video and sharing it really does make a difference to helping the word get out. Thanks for joining me, and as always, keep evolving.